All right, let's bring in Peter MacKay, former Conservative Justice Minister, joining us today via FaceTime from Toronto with his immediate reaction to this news. Peter, always good to have you with us on News Channel. What do you make of it?
Well, Todd, this is obviously a real torpedo in the side of HMCS Sunny Ways. I think the good ship Trudeau is feeling this in the worst possible way. And as Mr. Mulcair was just alluding to, yes, there may be brighter days ahead in terms of by-elections, but for today and for the foreseeable future, this is going to hurt Mr. Trudeau very personally, and it's going to also reinforce the necessity to hear from Jody Wilson-Raybould. What's curious, in my view, about both the timing and the wording of Mr. Butts' resignation is that at no time does he take responsibility. At no time does he offer any explanations. He simply is stepping aside to do away with any perception or any distraction. I don't think anybody is buying that whatsoever.
So let me read that, actually, because I'm glad you brought it up. He says in this resignation letter, and it is rather lengthy, he says, "I categorically deny the accusation that I or anyone else in the office pressured Ms. Wilson-Raybould. We honored the unique role of the Attorney General. Any accusation that I or the staff put pressure on the Attorney General is simply not true." So you were a former Justice Minister. You know the role the Justice Minister plays in our system of governance. What do you make of what he said there? What does that mean?
Well, it goes to the very crux of this question as to whether there was pressure or inappropriate comments, approach, application of force of any sort that was directing, to use the Prime Minister's word, Ms. Jody Wilson-Raybould, to do something. In this case, what we know is that it was to intervene in a prosecution that dealt with SNC-Lavalin. So by these denials, these adamant denials, in my view, it simply opens up more questions. If it wasn't Gerald Butts, then who was it? Because clearly something has precipitated all these events. The resignation from the demotion, I should say, then the resignation from the cabinet. And Ms. Jody Wilson-Raybould's silence, I think, is something that has only led to further speculation. So there's no reason now that Gerald Butts can't testify before a parliamentary committee. He should be speaking to the ethics commissioner or counselor, and who knows what's next, Todd? There could very well be a criminal investigation with regard to obstruction of justice. That may be the next shoe to drop.
And Jody Wilson-Raybould, Peter, might not be silent for much longer. Some of the commentators we've had here on the program over the past close to 3 hours now have said that perhaps there was something that's coming and that this is why Gerry Butts decided to go now, because he may be directly implicated in something that Jody Wilson-Raybould says if and when she goes public. How do they clear the air here, Peter? What do you think? You talked about the Justice Committee. They will be reconvening tomorrow, Tuesday, in Ottawa behind closed doors. What do they need to do here to reassure Canadians that this story is being contained and the government recognizes the seriousness of it and wants to make sure that they are able to clear the air?
Well, I think a couple of things. Firstly, any and all witnesses that are proposed by the committee should be permitted to testify. There shouldn't be any effort to block them by the Liberal majority. I think it's fair to say that the Prime Minister should also waive any privilege that he has been claiming thus far. Ms. Wilson-Raybould, we know, has sought counsel in the Honourable Thomas Cromwell, former Supreme Court judge, so I suspect she is well-versed now on what she can and cannot say. And I have to put it out there. Cabinet confidentiality or privilege cannot be invoked if there is a criminal act. And so people cannot hide behind that. If there is an actual obstruction here, that will eventually come out. But Jody Wilson-Raybould is the linchpin to all of it. I suspect that the resignation today is not just an amputation in the PMO. It feels more like a lobotomy for the Prime Minister. It's going to be very difficult for him going forward without Gerald Butts there to help him make the decisions, from change of socks to anything else.
Well, you mentioned lobotomy, and one person we had on the show did say that Gerald Butts is like Justin Trudeau's brain in terms of the strategy and crafting policy and really giving the government its most important sort of talking points. And when it comes to trying to resonate with Canadian voters, a very crucial time, of course. There is an election coming up in October here. Based on what you know, talk to me a little bit about the relationship between these two men and just how crucial it is to the Liberals' re-election strategy to have Gerald Butts there with Justin Trudeau.
Well, I think you're spot on. He is seen as the operating mind. He is seen as somebody who does far more than just political strategy. He seems to have his hands in everything, and their relationship goes back literally to their late teens. I think they've been noted to have been together since college at various times, although he worked in the government of Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne, and I'll refrain from commentary on what he did for the economy of Ontario and trying to replicate that for Canada. But the truth is, Mr. Trudeau will have a very difficult time, I suspect, having forged such a close relationship, and much of his success was tied to Gerald Butts. Without him heading into an election that is going to be a tough election in 8 months, it's going to be a much, much tougher road to hoe for Justin Trudeau.
One last thing, which is, as you know, those on the right and even some on the left, whether it's Conservative or NDP, have talked about the idea of somebody like Gerry Butts being an unelected top advisor to the Prime Minister, Peter, having so much power when it comes to crafting policy and calling the shots, making those phone calls behind closed doors, whipping the caucus, and on and on and on it goes. So now, if he's out, what sort of leadership, test of leadership, if I can use that term, is this going to be for Justin Trudeau? I mean, he's never been in this situation before.
I think it'll be the ultimate test for him because without that support system around him, that single individual that he seemed to lean on for so much, he will be at sea. But to your point, or to the issue of unelected officials, I don't think there's ever been this much power vested in a single non-elected person. Certainly in my memory of political history, you'd have to go back years and years, perhaps to the Tsar in Russia and Rasputin, before you had somebody who wielded so much power. And we know that it didn't end well there.
Peter MacKay, former Justice Minister, former Foreign Affairs Minister, longtime Conservative politician. Thank you for this, Peter. We appreciate you coming on the program on Family Day.
Yes, happy Family Day to you and everyone.